if you know how to do that. I'm letting the callers in. Okay. Everybody, all callers are in. Everybody looks like we're set. We're live on YouTube. The meeting is yours, Mr. Kowal.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular board of May 19th, 2020. One of them, yeah, 2020. Regular, but a little irregular. But again, thank you so much for joining us live on Zoom. And at this time, what I would like to do is call the meeting to order at approximately 7:01. And I would ask all of you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which
stands
one nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. A little challenging, but still nonetheless. Mr. Clerk, can you do roll call, please?
Mr. Kowal?
Here.
Mr. Lilly's here. Mr. Roman?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Andrea Voorhees?
Here.
Scott Ruggles?
Mr. Ruggles?
Scott is
He's muted.
Muted.
Scott?
Yeah.
Just give us a thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah,
Everybody's here.
Thank you. Okay, looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes, sir.
make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have a motion to approve the agenda. Looking for support.
I'll
support.
support that.
I have support from Michael Powell. Roll call vote, please.
Kowal?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
And Liz Smith?
Yes.
Mike Powell?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Very good. At this time, we'll go into public comment. Anyone in the public out there now? This meeting is a little different than our in-council chamber meeting. At this time, if you have anything to say about anything that is on the agenda or not, please do so. We'll have to, Ken, you're there somewhere. You'll have to do the raise the hand. And Ken can instruct you on that, but we would like to know who you are. So I'd like you to identify yourself, and you'll have a few minutes here to state whatever it is. Anyone at this time have anything to say?
Yeah, and again, the instruction for that, Mr. Kowal, is *9. If you're a call-in listener to this meeting, press *9 on your keypad, and we will be alerted that you would like to speak, and we will unmute your call.
Thank you, Ken. Anyone at this time? Anything there, Ken?
I'm not seeing any virtual hands raised.
Okay, so seeing none, moving on. Okay, looking at consent agenda. Mr. Clerk?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion to approve consent agenda. Looking for support.
I'll support that.
Andrea Voorhees will support the consent agenda. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Smith? Liz?
Yes. Sorry, Terry.
Mike Powell?
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees?
Yes.
Scott Ruggles?
Yes.
Mr. Kowal?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Item number 7, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 21st, 2020. Mr. Powell?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I have a minor change or correction. Page 12, down towards the bottom. It is starts with Trustee Powell, of course. If you found that section there in the middle of the page, I think it's like 7 paragraphs down. It starts with Trustee Powell. Go to the second line. In the middle of that line, it says he furthered that out of not 3,000, there's a 0 left off, out of 30,000 residents in the township. We have a very low incident. So it just there's just a 0 off there.
Thank you. Okay, duly noted. The change will be duly noted. Are you going to make a motion to approve?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted with that change.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the minutes with the change. Looking for support.
Support.
That came from Mr. Ruggles, I believe.
Yep.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes,
Hall,
Yes.
Henry Voorhees,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Cowell,
Yes,
Mr. Lilly votes yes.
thank you. Item 8. Item 8 is a presentation that will be done by our associates from Plant Moran. And Chris, I'm not sure, Chris or Pam, I don't know which one of you wants to lead it off, but nonetheless, this is to our public out there. This is our audit that is done annually by Plant Moran. It judges the financial stability and activity of the township, and it's how it affects you, the money that you pay in your taxes, and how we run our township. Without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Pam Hill, I believe. Pam?
Yes, thank you very much for having us. Can you all see my screen?
yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
It looks good? Okay, good. So thank you for having us. This is actually, we've done a lot of virtual meetings so far, but this is our first board one. So really glad to be here with everyone. Great to see all your faces. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the audit results for the 12/31/2019 fiscal year end. So this year was a little unusual. Normally we come out to the township, we spend 2 weeks out there. In this year, we actually were able to do the entire audit remotely. We did spend approximately 300 hours, which is really right about the amount of hours we normally spend. So with that, as you can imagine, that's quite a bit of time. We did want to thank Rick, Mike, Terry, Dawn, Lisa, and most importantly probably is Elaine. She puts a lot of hard work into getting ready for the audit every year, and it really shows in the fact that we basically, I think, are presenting at the same meeting that we always have, even though we did this all 100% remotely this year. So we really, really appreciate the attentiveness that she gave us in prioritizing things that we needed, and really just can't say enough about the great job that Elaine did. On top of doing an entire audit remotely, we also the township implemented a new standard this year, GASB 84. So I'm sure you'll notice when flipping through the financial statements, there's a lot of things that look a little bit different this year. And this standard was definitely a heavy lift. And so I do want to, again, thank Elaine for that too. We spent quite a bit of time with her working through all the decision matrices and things that needed to happen in order to ensure that the township implemented properly and everything was up to cuff. So again, just thanks to Elaine. And if you're wondering why some things look a little different this year, that would be why. So we do have today the graph presentation similar to what we've presented in the past. We were planning on going through that. The final PDF copies of the financial statements and end of audit letter actually just got finished today. So if you're wondering why you haven't seen those yet, that would be why. Those will be coming to you likely in the next few days, as we just sent over the final PDF copies like about a couple hours ago. And then you will still be getting the printed bound copies as well, as you normally do every year. So those will be coming, within the next couple weeks. So with that, I did want to just cover with the financial statement audit, we did once again have an unmodified opinion. So that is the highest level of assurance that the township can receive from their auditors. And basically what it means is you can rely on the numbers as they are presented within those statements. another great thing is that there were no internal control weaknesses or deficiencies. And so what that means for you as a board is that you really can rely on the numbers as they are presented to you throughout the year on your monthly financial statements. And, as a growing community, and with everything that's going on right now in terms of what the revenue forecasts are going to look like and things like that, it's even more important now than ever to be able to know that you can rely on the numbers that are in your statements and in your general ledger system. And, we're not coming out and making a whole bunch of changes to them. So, it's a good testament to the great team that the township has working with you. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Chris, and we're going to walk through just some of the financial highlights as of 12/31. And maybe just for ease, if you guys don't mind, we'll wait till the end of the presentation and then take any questions from the board at that time. All right, Chris, I'm going to move it to the next slide and hand it off to you.
All right, thanks, Pam. So this first graph really is focusing in on the general fund and the revenue and transfers included within the general fund. And really, it's a trend analysis of the general fund revenue for the last 5 years, again, including transfers in from other funds as well. So for 2019, the total revenue and transfers were just under 6.5 million. And as you can see here, for the most part, revenue has shown a trend of an increase in the fiscal years presented. So basically it's been inching up. So this includes an overall increase of about 329,000 from the prior year. And in this year, I guess that increase is primarily related to that accounting change that Pam did mention, GASB 84, which essentially moved some activities that were previously considered fiduciary activities to the general fund. Fiduciary activities, the definition did change under that standard. So that's the primary increase there, reason for the increase. Other than that, I think what you'll notice is that the township's two largest revenue sources are state revenue and property taxes. I'm sure that's no surprise. So state revenue did decrease from the prior year. However, last year was kind of an outlier as there was a large grant that the township received in 2018. So when looking at the past 5 years, you'll see that this amount is steadily increasing for the most part. And then real quick, just looking at property tax revenue, that increased slightly, which essentially is a function of taxable values going up. So then if we go to the next slide, basically the same concept here, just expenditures and transfers out, specifically for the general fund. So if you look at 2019 on the far right column, total expenditures and transfers out for 2019 were just about 5.7 million, a little over that. And basically overall expenditures has remained pretty consistent over the past 5 years, although you will see an increase of about 1.3 million in the current year from 2018. So again, this primarily was related to a couple things. First and foremost, there were transfers out to the improvement revolving fund of about 609,000. And essentially that was done to be used for future township improvements. And then there was about 722,000, and that was related to the accounting change that we previously mentioned, moving some activities from a fiduciary fund to the general fund. And then other than this, so taking a step back, operationally, expenditures were pretty consistent to the prior year if you take those out of it. Other than some slight increases related to general government projects. So then the next slide, again, still focusing on the general fund. What this is looking at is it's showing a comparison between the annual expenditures and the annual unassigned fund balance. So the annual expenditures is in that teal color and the unassigned fund balance is in the orange color each year. So in 2019, the unassigned fund balance represented approximately 27% of the annual expenditures. So, I mean, one thing we like to say is as the township continues to spend responsibly, we know that management has been discussing what needs the township has in relating to some of the long-term needs. So in discussing capital needs and legacy costs, Those are two of the big ones. And as a result, the township had earmarked these certain funds for these purposes. And so just continuing to maintain focus on what the target is for the township here and how do you keep your unassigned fund balance within that target range while still paying your bills as they come due and still addressing those long-term capital needs and legacy costs that does. Okay, so the next slide, this one right here, this is now, instead of just the general fund, this is showing all governmental funds of the township for the past 5 years. So in total, in the far right there for 2019, governmental expenditures were just about 24.3 million, which does represent an increase of about 1.1 million from the prior year. And again, as you can see here, the two largest categories for in looking at all governmental funds would be public safety, number one, and then general government, number two. So public safety, and that's at the bottom in the teal, that increased about 693,000. And that was related primarily to equipment acquisitions and then maintenance on the capital assets or on those equipment. So, and then looking at general government, that's the second largest category. That was about an increase of 477,000. And that, a lot of that is related to kind of what we discussed before in the general fund due to that accounting change for GASB 84 that was adopted.
Chris, before you go on, this is Mike Powell asking. Under recreation and culture, that appears to be bigger. What is that line item?
I wonder, Chris, if that could be the library.
That would be, you're right, correct.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So that would be a kind of 2 year.
Yeah, in 2018.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. All right, so the last slide here is focusing specifically on the water fund. And this is showing operating revenue and operating expenses over the last 5 years. And really, this is a good indicator of whether the current users of the system are covering the costs associated with them using the system. So as you'll see in 2019, operating revenue and expenses have been very consistent with the prior year. And in 2019, it showed a slight operating loss of about 68,000, which is in fact including depreciation expense. So overall, historically, this has been pretty close to break even if you're looking at the last 5 years specifically. So with that being said, that does end the financial statement highlights. Just kind of looking at a high level. Does anybody have any questions on any of those graphs?
Hey, Chris, if I could just interject really quick too, just to kind of summarize, all the numbers and kind of, if you're looking at the year as a whole, kind of how did it go? So I think the township had a good year. You've continued to position yourself very well as you continue to grow. This isn't by accident, obviously. It's responsible budgeting practices and great decisions by management in terms of focus and cost-cutting measures. I think you've done a great job in terms of your long-term liabilities, and that's really positioned you well to be able to kind of look out in the future. Now, you still do have some challenges with your legacy costs, but not nearly close to what a lot of the state is facing. And so that's going to allow you to do two things. One, as you continue to grow, it's going to allow you to have the flexibility to grow with the community and help the community grow. But also in these times where, state share revenue cuts are uncertain and what else might come from the state, you're still positioned to handle any kind of revenue cuts that may come in. Now, do we want them? No. But just by the pure fact that state share revenue has to do with sales tax collections, we know they're coming. Hopefully, with the 2020 census numbers and when those come in, that may offset some of the reductions that you're going to see, with the sales tax revenue collections. But that's kind of anybody's guess right now in terms of what those two pieces will look like and how they'll offset each other. But really overall, I think as a board, you should feel really good about where you're at and, the decisions you've made in the financial position of the township. So anyway, that's just kind of an overall perspective of kind of where the numbers ended up. And then I guess we'd open it up for questions. Rick, if that's okay. We didn't have anything else we had planned to cover.
Right. Any of the board members have a question? Just kind of raise your hand there so we can see it. Oh, we got lots of hands. Okay, Mr. Roman.
Thanks, Rick. I just wanted to say thank you to Plant Moran. I'm super impressed with the job that you guys did facilitating this entire audit offline and offsite. So, Chris, Pam, super job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Powell.
Yes, Pam, you actually alluded to something because I anticipate a state revenue sharing drop this year. And you kind of alluded to that, and it may be modified slightly based upon what you represented. There's another item. I didn't know if we'd have an artificial bump in revenue. I can't remember when we received the grant from the state for the park purchase. That will probably come in 2020, will it not?
Yeah, I believe that's 2020, isn't it, Rick?
That was, when did we close? We closed on that in
December 2019.
19, yeah.
Yeah, so
the funds then would be, were they received in 2020 or 2019?
They were received, well, we didn't actually receive them. They were directly paid on our behalf by the state. So they may not actually reflect on our ledger. The check didn't come to us and then go to the party. It went to a third party.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, next question. Scott, Mr. Ruggles, turn your mute off.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Actually, I didn't have any questions, but appreciate the good job done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz, did you have anything?
No, thank you so much. And thank you for recognizing Elaine. She does such hard work. So thank you. So much. And thank you for your kind words to our board as well and all your efforts to accomplish this in an unusual time. You did a great job as always. So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lilly.
I also want to thank Chris and Pam for all they do. I know every year we talk about how much work that is put into this, and I know it's getting more complicated and more costly, but thank you for the job that you guys do.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Andrea?
Yep, I was just going to say exactly what everyone else has said. Thank you, Pam and Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one question. Where's the pizza?
I know.
So again, I thank all of you very, very much. We have a very good staff here that do a great job. Mr. Lilly, Mr. Roman, and your staff, Elaine and Dawn and Lisa Reeser, they all do a great job trying to get everything to come forward. And we always learn a little something. And this year was definitely had its challenges, as so many things have proved to be here in the last few months. But again, I certainly appreciate it. Now, my question to you, Pamela, if we were to get a grade, real basic terms for some of the folks out there who don't completely understand all this, where would we be on that scale?
Yes, so you're reminding me of the Les Pulver days, right? He always likes to give a grade. So, yeah, so I would say in terms of, having the unmodified opinion and the fiscal health of the township, I would have to give you an A+.
Wow.
And hopefully my comments, express that as well too, in terms of where you guys are at. So I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anything else to add, Chris or Pam?
I don't think so.
I think that covers it.
Board members, anything else?
Thank you again.
No, just thank you so much.
Appreciate it very much for being with us tonight. And that will conclude our presentation of our 2019 financial statement presentation. And of course, this information is public information and is available if anybody would like to see it.
Mr. Supervisor, Mr.
Yes.
Supervisor, should
Yes.
we make a motion to receive and file this or just leave it go?
We can as a formality. I would make a motion that we receive and file. Looking for support.
Support?
I have support from Mr. Powell. Roll call vote.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles. Scott,
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Kowal,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Duly noted, received and filed. Thank you very much, Pam and Chris.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Moving on to section 9, our resolutions, or resolution 9A, which is 20-013, our community development block grant program. For some of those of you who may not be familiar with that, it is our program that allows us to receive dollars through Oakland County and through the federal government and a variety of sources that allows us to help folks out through the variety of programs that we have. I don't have the specific programming for this particular year because now what we're doing tonight is just doing our intention to our interest to participate, and that's what tonight is. So I am looking to my board members for us to carry on our tradition that we have for many years here and to move forward. Mr. Ruggles, you have a question?
Yeah. Oh, I'd just like to say I'm a big supporter of this program, and I'd make a motion to approve the resolution if you'd like.
I would like that very much so, sir.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 20-013.
I'll
Second.
give you
I have a motion to approve 20-013, which is the Charter Township of White Lake interest in participating in the CBDG program. Support from
Second.
Supported that.
Liz Smith. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Kowal,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Very good. The motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. 9B, Resolution 20-014, 2020 Amended Appropriations Act. That is how we operate and how the money comes in, the money comes out, the balances, and this sort. Are there any questions from the board at this time on the Appropriations Act? This is an annual passage. Mr. Lilly.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to support the amendment. And if people will remember, the change in the amendment was the reason that policy and procedures were amended and the amounts were taken off of those. That would be particularly section 12, the second paragraph.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Any other questions from the board members? Mr. Roman.
I would like to support Terry's motion.
I have motion, I have support. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Kowal,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes, Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Very good. The motion carries.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. 9, are we good? Okay. 9C, Resolution 20-015 to tentatively declare its intention to establish a special assessment district to be known as the Mannan Lake Improvement District. So what this is Janine is our assessor. And Janine, are you online? Okay. And this is essentially, is this a renew? This is a renewal, correct?
Janine is, there you
Yes.
go.
That's correct.
Okay, so it is a 5-year renewal of the SAD to administer and maintain the cost of augmentation well with weed control. They're requesting a 5-year assessment of $160 per parcel per year, including the required administration fee. They have acquired the necessary 51% signature. They have approximately 65%. And I thank you, all of you folks from the Mandan Lake area, for being active in that. And of course, attaches, we have it before you as a board, you have the resolution. Are there any questions on the resolution from the board members?
I do.
Mr. Roman, you had your hand up first.
Janine, I was just curious if you know if they actually have a lake board.
They do not.
They do
There
not.
is no lake board on Mandan.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't have a formal lake board.
They don't want one.
Yeah,
So someone must have gone around and gotten all these signatures.
I actually did individual petitions, and I did have somebody that walked around and put them in their doors, and then he went back and picked them up later.
Wow.
Awesome. Yeah, because I know it's more difficult without a lake board to get that cooperation. Thanks, Janine.
Yep.
Mr. Powell.
Yes, I wanted to remind the board that this is just a tentatively declaring the intent. We have 2 more public hearings. And in paragraph 2, and I think I need Lisa's help on this one. In paragraph 2, it specifically points out that the first public hearing will be held on the 16th day of June at the Township Hall or in the Township Hall. And I have a question because number 1, are we going to be in the annex? ? And then if we're going to have it online like this in June, do we have to specifically state that, or does this definition here apply to everything, no matter where we hold the meeting or how we hold it?
That's a good question. It's a question that a lot of our communities are asking now. It's the uncertainty. The fact that the governor extended the ability to have these meetings to the end of June gives us some instruction, some direction. I think maybe we can tweak paragraph 2, Janine, to state an alternative location or make it contingent on, the lifting of the stay-at-home order, or we simply decide to hold it by Zoom and put that in the resolution.
So I guess we'll have to defer to Rick when he's
I would
ready to.
like to see alternative location and or
Yeah.
Zoom. And or Zoom. And we will watch as things progress.
And that's probably, Rick, that's probably the safer way to go, because if you want to put both, then we'd still have a Zoom meeting, even if we're having a meeting at the Township Hall, so some people can still participate by Zoom.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would feel much more comfortable doing that. And I would like
that's a good point.
support of the board for that. So, okay, any other questions? Any board members, any other questions? Am I missing anybody? Okay. Okay, that being said, I would like to solicit a motion. Mr. Roman.
Like to make a motion to approve the intent resolution for Mandan Lake Improvement, resolution number 20-015, with additional language in paragraph 2, where it says located at 7525 Highland Road. We'll add language that says or alternative location or Zoom.
I think it's going to be in addition to, right?
Or alternative location and Zoom.
Or leave it to the discretion of the township supervisor. We'll tweak that language.
I would appreciate
You could
that.
just say in accordance with our discussion today.
Okay, so paragraph 2, we'll say located at 7525 Highland Road or alternative location as discussed
Yep.
in the board meeting.
That's fine.
Does that work?
With Zoom capability or with Zoom. We'll throw that in there. Make sure Zoom's in there somewhere.
Okay, and I will add in with Zoom.
I support.
Okay, we have motion to approve resolution 20015 as amended with an alternative location and or also Zoom meeting. And we have support by Mr. Powell. Roll call vote, please.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you very much, board members. Okay, moving on to new business, item 10. We have a request to approve preliminary site plan of the New Hope project in White Lake. Mr. O'Neill, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think Ken is prepared to share our screen if you guys would like to see any page of the site plan up. I guess I would ask at this point if Andy Andre and John Zarnecki could be brought in. They are part of the applicant's team.
I'm bringing them up now, Sean.
Okay.
Andy and John, starting your cameras and unmuting you. Perfect.
All right.
Hey guys.
Here we go. So this is a New Hope White Lake. Tonight they're seeking preliminary site plan approval, and this will be first reading for the rezoning as well. This project is located on the west side of Williams Lake Road and south of Elizabeth Lake Road, consisting of approximately 21 acres, currently zoned single family R1B, and the applicant is seeking rezoning to planned development. So this was before the Planning Commission on May 7th, at which time they received unanimous approval. I should say recommendation was unanimous and for both the rezoning and the site plan. There were some conditions that are found in the review letters, and there were some comments from some neighbors requesting some screening adjacent to the final home at the end of Benny Lane with some berms and trees and things like that. And I think that the applicant has agreed to all the conditions that were found in the review letters, as well as those conditions that came up at the meeting that night. So I would be happy to answer any questions you might have about that meeting. And again, the applicant's team is here if you have any questions for them as well. So again, there are two items tonight. The first one is preliminary site plan approval, and then the second one would be first reading of the rezoning request.
Any questions from the board members? Mr. Lilly.
Mr. Supervisor, this has always been a very difficult piece of property for the township because of the existing grades on the property. And I had an opportunity today to really go through the file there, and I want to thank all of the planning commissioners for their input that they had on this project. And in particular, I'd like to mention the fact that it appeared from my conversation with Sean and reading the documents that the applicant themselves have been more than cooperative to meet the requests of the township. So I'd like to thank them also for that. This is quite a project.
You know, along those lines, if I could really quickly, because I probably wrapped up too soon, for this assisted living and memory care project, I think it's a pretty quiet use. It's in an area where they're surrounded by existing homeowners for the most part. So I think the impact of this project is something that needed to be considered. And I think this is about as low of an impact type of project as we could hope for. It's certainly a need we have in the township. And I want to thank the applicants because, you know, there were some very concerned neighbors. And before this even got started months ago, he spoke with me about it. He got their contact information. He sought them out. He met with them. He invited them up to his two facilities he has in Saginaw and in Bay City, and let them tour the facilities that are going to be similar in operation to this facility, and really took hesitant and concerned neighbors and made them allies of his. I think they both, there were three, I think, neighbors who spoke to the Planning Commission, all in support of this project. I don't think there were any who spoke out against it, and that's really a testament to the applicant and their group and how kind of disarming they've been from the beginning with this. And they understand, again, the sensitivity of this parcel and some of the challenges associated with this parcel. So, it makes my job a lot easier when they're willing to meet with the neighbors and I'm not the intermediary. I just put the two groups together and they work through a lot of these issues. So I appreciate it. It doesn't usually happen quite this way.
Thank you. Mr. Powell.
I know that'll surprise you, but I've got a couple questions for Sean and then for the applicants as well. Sean, if this were a straightforward multiple rezoning, just so that we aren't surprised in the future, are there any variances that are or any deviations that are being looked at because it's going PD versus multiple?
That's a good question.
It doesn't appear that there is. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
I'm trying to think, what is your overall roof height right now, Rumi or Andy?
I think if everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so it is a single story building. So I do believe that, it is a low profile. I can look that up real quick, but with it being single story, it is pitched roof, more residential in character. It's not a very tall building. So I don't think from that perspective, Sean, we're not looking at anything drastic.
Okay, yeah, it's usually, 2-story or maybe like a 30-foot limitation, and that's measured the midpoint between the peak and the gutter. So I don't know that they're higher than that. I mean, it's a high ceiling in a 1-story building, but that would have been the one thing that stuck out. But I don't think, they're good on parking. They've got quite a landscape buffer that's kind of naturally existing on the site. It's a very oddly shaped parcel, so it's very narrow. I think only 200 feet wide at Williams Lake Road, and it opens up as you get further into the back. I know some of you are familiar with this property or more familiar with this property than others, but nothing stands out at this point, Mr. Powell. But as we get to final and we start looking at maybe more of specifics, we'll, as you know, be coming back. This project, if it advances tonight and goes through the process, we'll come back to the board to have the development agreement approved by the township board at a later date. So if there are any issues that do come up, you'll have an opportunity to weigh in on them at the very end of this process.
All right, thank you, and I appreciate that. And I can't even imagine a better use for this property than what we see before us here. It's almost perfectly made for it. I do have a question for Sean as well, and maybe the owners can chime in a little bit. For a PD, it's written specifically not to be one-sided for the owner, but to receive some public benefit in order to allow for this zoning. I didn't know, I can't pick out anything specifically that they're offering the township.
So, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but this came up at the Planning Commission. One of the public benefits was the utilities that would be extended along the south end of the homes that front on Benny Lane. Those homes are, I think there are 4 of them that are not currently on the water or sewer system. And those utilities would be able to be accessed from this site. Easements would be provided, stubs would be left. So all 4 of those homeowners would be able to connect to our utilities if need be in the future. That was one of the features offered. Another thing we had discussed was, they only have about a 200-foot sidewalk, possibly, trying to extend the sidewalk a little further to the north where it might connect to Williams Lake Crossing. That didn't really come up at the Planning Commission, but it's something I spoke with the owner about. It's a little bit of a distance, so I don't know that the whole connection could be made. It's something that can be looked at further, but any suggestions you might have, we'd certainly be willing to discuss it tonight.
And I was leaning that same way. The Planning Commission debated whether a sidewalk would be needed or not. I think it's important to have a sidewalk because otherwise the neighbor to the north or south extend one and then we have a gap. I think we ought to reach out to the owners and say, would you assist us in extending sidewalk to the north? I think that would be extremely beneficial. And then I had a couple questions of the owners. The building elevations are very, very plain. And I read the input from the Planning Commission. It'd be great if you could add some stone, brick, facade, something that makes it look other than a army barracks from each elevation. So I would appreciate the planning commission looking into that a little bit more. This is pretty critical, and I noticed the planning commission picked up on it. I've had a number of relatives, and I'm close behind in joining them into one of these facilities. And there are 2 items that just seem to be shortages on each facility that I visit. So I go in and visit my mother and mother-in-law at these places, and we have them in a wheelchair, and you can push them around the halls, and how exciting can you be going around the halls? You can put them out in a courtyard and push them out there, and you look around and say, look at the pretty flowers and the trees. Yeah, that's nice. What we like to do is go outside on a nice day and push them in a wheelchair around an entire building or through something in order to enjoy the outside a little bit more. And I'm going to support the planning commission in this. I think there's a major lacking in sidewalk for the public and for the residents to walk around. You're never going to get them out the Williams Lake Road. So I'm not talking about a walkway down the entranceway. That'd be crazy. Somehow around the building and provide for some walking room and some kind of a course for the residents, the patrons and your guests to walk their loved ones. The other issue is, and I know your parking works out, but on special events, we normally have to park way away from the building or alongside the roadway or something. You got 116 beds. In theory, you'd like to have 116 guests there, residents there every day. Easter, Christmas, and some kind of event, dinners for everybody, whatever, you're going to fill that parking lot up really fast. And I'm asking that you try to provide some Grass Creek parking areas for overflow or some other creative way to invite people and not have them walk all the way up and down the entryway because they have to park down your entrance. I had an issue, and I know the entrance is already designed and already constructed. I found at these facilities, you end up with people trying to turn left out of a facility, especially on Williams Lake Road, morning and evening. You're going to have a left-hand turner sitting there to leave the facility, and you're going to back up and not allow right-hand turns out. So whether it can be striped the way it's currently constructed or whether you have to widen it a little bit, one inbound lane is obviously plenty sufficient, but a left-hand turn lane and a right-hand turn lane independent of each other, I think would be very helpful. And a kudos, I can't believe you did this, but a kudos, you have a lot of old people visiting the old people, the spouses and things, and you have the parking spaces at 10 feet wide. And that's kudos to you guys because, man alive, people throw those doors open, they can't get in and out. And I think that's a great call on your part. So take my input for what it's worth, and I'll hold Sean's feet to the fire on these issues.
Indeed, you will. One thing I wanted to mention is on that entryway, some of the planning commissioners had asked for possibly some sort of boulevarding in that entryway if possible, which would maybe widen that out as well. So there could be some redesign between now and final to take some of these things into account, either widening it out to add another lane like you've just discussed, Mr. Powell, or possibly putting a short boulevard at entrance.
And I thank my board for putting up with me.
As we always do, Michael. Any of the other board members? Mr. Lilly.
I just want additional, Sean, I know that the traffic on Williams Lake Road is really difficult to get out of, but I'm going to support the fact that the Planning Commission wants to put a boulevard in the first part of that. Also, I wanted to mention 2 things. One, it was mentioned in the documents that most of the residents there are not going to be able to have vehicles. And I wonder if that talked to that a little bit, as well as I think there was in the documents that there were going to be no other buildings built on that property. Is that correct?
Terry, if you may, I just didn't hear it. They wouldn't have what at night?
The last line, we couldn't hear you. Something about referring to something at night.
Harry,
Carried.
I'm sorry.
I just didn't hear you. I'm sorry. You were saying something that they wouldn't have at night, and I just didn't catch what you said. Would you mind repeating, please?
There's the two things with the parking. That the residents there will probably not be driving residents. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And also that there was something in the documents alluded to the fact there would be no additional buildings built on the property. Was that correct?
That's correct. And I think, and I'll let the applicant, I know he wants to say a few words in a second too, but there is a small building that will be used for an office and for a training facility. And you can see that out at the, I guess it would be the southwest corner off of the building. It's just a small unit, and the applicants can talk to you more about that. But I think the plan is, it's been told to me that none of these residents will drive. They'll be transported either in the bus that the facility owns, a township vehicle, our township transportation vehicle, or their families. So there won't be residents coming and going from this.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion, Rick, for that.
I think, one moment, I think Liz had something that she wanted to ask. Liz, was there a question or something? Did I see your hand up?
I just wanted to add that I echo many of Mr. Powell's thoughts. Him and I join all the time together in sidewalks and walkability, and we have both had the honor of being a caregiver to a loved one, and I agree. We were able to have something a little more for them, especially for those residents that aren't able to leave. That's really important for their well-being and purpose, and for their family to be able to visit them and make it more pleasurable for everybody. So I just echo, many of his comments. I know we're in the beginning stages and tweaks can be made. The project is very needed. Thank you so much. I think this is wonderful with the baby boomers coming. We need to be able to best serve our residents that are aging and serve them with grace and dignity and make this a nice place for them. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Rumi, 1 second, folks. I'm going to give the applicant a chance. Rumi, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Certainly, appreciate it, Rick. So, with me are John Zarnecki, who's our Director of Operations, and Andy, who's designed our project, who's the civil engineer. I'll take 1 minute to say that our communities are predominantly sort of designed. One of the board members touched the well-being. So what we try to create is an ecosystem that meets the social, emotional, physical, spiritual, and intellectual well-being of the residents in the communities. Our residents are about, median age in our communities is between 88 and 89. None of them on the assisted living and memory care side, which is what we are proposing to build here, drive. So what we try to do is create opportunities for them in the building design and around there for them to benefit from a soothing, calming atmosphere. There's a lot of landscaping that goes into it. We love this site, and we're trying to preserve more than 80% of the trees on this site, because it's sort of like being in the middle of the very densely populated area, but still having like a Thomas Hardy far from the madding crowd feel when you are there. That's what this site lends itself to. I know 4 questions got specifically asked. I'll address one of them, and I'll let Andy and John talk to the others. The one I want to address is about the walkability and about sort of what features the residents and their family members would have. Appreciated the feedback from the Planning Commission on this as well. So inside the community, there are 3 courtyards that range anywhere from 5,000 to 9,500 square feet. Within those courtyards, we create walking paths for the residents to be able to be out and about and get that exposure. After the planning commission meeting, we put our heads together with our engineer, and what we are going to do is on the outside of the building, between where the office or the training place is and the building, we're going to have a gazebo and a walkway that connects to the gazebo. It creates an opportunity for the residents and family members in a safe way to come out and benefit from the outdoors. And it also enables the employees on their breaks to be able to be out and about. So that's a feature we have discussed, and in the final plan that will be submitted to you, it will be included. Now I'll defer to Andy on the, as it pertains to the Williams Lake entryway and putting a boulevard there. All I would highlight to you folks is that the trips being generated here based on the traffic study and that was done for this project and based on our experience are de minimis. So as opposed to 50 or 80 or 100 houses, versus in this community where no resident is driving, the trips are being generated by either visitors into the community or by the employees that are coming in and leaving. So it's a very low traffic impact, but I'll let Andy talk to it. And after Andy's touched on that, I'll like John an opportunity for a minute to talk about our community as well. But Andy, would you please go ahead?
Sure, absolutely. Let me touch on a couple points real quickly. When Mr. Lilly, I believe you brought up that there's a lot of grade change along this property. This is a very unique piece of property, the shape of the property. And as Mr. Powell said, I think this use is probably as good a use as you can expect to have on here. We worked really diligently with the neighbor homeowners association in making sure that we heard the concerns. We understand that there was developments that were proposed here in the past, and there were challenges during that time. And so we took it head on in order to address those as much as we could going into the process. One of the things when we looked at this as a, as a rezoning to the PD district, public benefit. When you have an opportunity to look at this piece of property, this is a very mature piece of property with mature trees on it and heavily screened, all surrounded by residential zoning. So one of the critical features that we looked at was where the building would be positioned, what the elevation of that building would be, how do we maximize our developable area, but still minimize the impact. So we've taken a lot of that into consideration. The plan that you have in front of you, we've been adjusting it since the planning commission meeting. But our initial goal set out here was to minimize the impact to the existing vegetation out there, to provide the natural buffer and to continue that natural buffer that was there with the neighbors. And I think we're accomplishing that with this. Another thing is, I think Sean had mentioned, the couple houses along the northern border of our property, we're going to stub out utilities to those. So both water and sewer, we're going to stub those connections to. We'll work with them on that to the rear of their property. So in the future, should they need, should go off a septic or the well system, they're going to have availability there, and we'll be putting those utilities in as part of it. I do want to touch real quickly on the walkability, as Rumi had mentioned. We already have made some adjustments in the layout. I was actually working on it while during the meeting here, trying to continue that on. But I think we're extending the walkability beyond just what's in the courtyards, and having also a little bit of a destination place, as he had mentioned, with a gazebo, some kind of sitting area, kind of varying a little bit of what we're doing. So we already have incorporated that as part of it. And I think the one thing that was brought up during the planning commission meeting, I think Mr. Powell, you had brought it up as well, is about the entry. One of the things that we're looking at here is it's a little bit unique, is that probably when Williams Lake Road was reconstructed and work was done there, a commercial driveway entry was actually installed already for this. So there's some tapers that were already installed as part of this. And when we look at our traffic study that we conducted, obviously it is a low volume traffic generation. And I think we're trying to look at some options of how do we better improve that you know, getting in and out at that entrance, not just for the convenience and safety of our folks, but also from an aesthetic point. I think that's important to consider in there. So we are working on some options through there. We're trying to work with what's already been installed and to not disturb what's there. So we are looking at all of those things. So I think with all of that, with you know, with our goal of minimizing the impact and working diligently with both Sean's staff, the consultants, and the neighborhood, I think we're putting together a plan that I think everybody will be proud of.
Appreciate it,
Thank
Andy.
you.
John, you want to add?
Yeah, just real quick. Real quick on the front of the building, we do use cultured stone on the front of our buildings. Matter of fact, that the elevations didn't show that, didn't do it justice. So actually at the planning commission meeting, many of them pulled up our websites, and on both of our websites, newhopevalley.org, newhopebay.org, you see pictures of all 4 of our current buildings. And once they saw those, they were actually quite impressed with what we had done. And so you'll see a lot more going forward, but even if you have an interest, please feel free to go to the website. You'll see what our buildings look like from the outside. And then again, the neighbors that have been so great from the association who came and visited also were echoing the quality of the construction that we do. And it's like Rumi says, we can build really nice buildings and this will be a beautiful building, but it's really about the people we hire and the heart they have to serve. And that's what I think our reputation stands for. So we're committed to that. We build partnerships from day one. It's been great working with Sean and everyone there. Rick, we've talked to in the past. Many of you have been fantastic to work with. And I'll tell you, that's been our attitude all along. And to give you an idea what happened here at New Hope Bay, the township supervisor's mother-in-law moved in shortly after we opened, and then the fire chief here locally in the township, his mother moved in. We had a lot of folks who with, I believe, we earned their trust, and they chose New Hope for their family members and became great friends. We've been very fortunate to have that. So I hope that speaks to the spirit that what we're about, but most importantly, we're willing to earn it, and White Lake will be another opportunity for that.
Yeah, and to recap, if I may at the end mention that a lot of our managers and employee referrals, we would like to say residents represent the heart of our communities and the employees represent the soul. They have been recommended by the local township officials. So the bridges that we've built with them, at the end of the day, we are as good as the caregivers that are working in our buildings. So that's been a great help. And John sort of mentioned the relationship. I should even mention the fact that when we started looking for our campus, we looked at 12 or so towns in Oakland, Washtenaw, and Livingston counties. And we met extensively, visited the county, visited the different townships. The professionalism, the welcome, the effort that Sean made initially along with Hannah, and then later on meeting with Rick, inviting them to come visit our communities, they became sort of our eyes and ears in trying to identify the right site. We looked at a couple of other options that did not work out, but I think the final one that we have, they say things happen for a reason. So, I really want to also give a shout out at the very end to our new neighbors once we open up. We have developed such a strong rapport with them. If I could share with you on my iPhone, in the last 3 months, I have pictures that the neighbors have sent of turkey and deer in their backyards that they really enjoy. So what we literally have tried to do is minimize that impact, because and we place the building in such a way, the driveway in the middle, so that we have to remove as little of the vegetation as possible and keep their surrounding habitat as pure and as serene as possible. So we'll keep working towards it. Appreciate everyone's feedback on this. And then I'm gonna now turn it back to you, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rumi. Liz Smith, please.
So, can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you so much for being considerate to the neighbors and listening to our suggestions. I appreciate that so much. I don't know if this is able to see for our residents, but I did pull up as we were speaking, and I just want, because we don't have a picture of it for our meeting, but that is a building. Can you guys see that? It's
kind of a general idea.
Yeah, general idea. I believe that's your Saginaw location.
Yeah, that's the Valley main campus. Yeah.
So I just thank you. Thank you for being considerate to the neighbors, and thank you for listening to our suggestions. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. Excuse me, Mr. Roman. I'm sorry.
I'm looking like Mike Powell.
No, but
Because
I won't go there with that. Okay.
I do feel like I'm approaching senior status quickly
Okay.
at lightning speed. Annie, John, Rami. I'm Mike Roman, Township Treasurer. I want to thank you guys for bringing this project to White Lake. I applaud any senior living facility. Really looking forward to it. These types of projects typically require a significant effort by our public safety teams. And with this crazy tax environment, it looks like possible revenue declines in all of my sources. I just wanted to get your assurance, guys, on the record that this project is not planning on seeking any type of nonprofit or other tax status that would exempt this project from paying property taxes in White Lake.
It is not.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, they are a privately held group, and through a series of persons in the medical industry, we'll say. And when Rumi first came to me, to myself and Sean, we talked about a variety of sites. And then when things didn't work out, we kind of told him, he said he really endeared himself to us, that he wanted to be in White Lake. So we decided to start looking around to see what we could find. And we had, again, as it's been mentioned, something else going on this site. And then we thought, this is the ideal product. This particular, it solves the traffic problem that we have on Williams Lake Road that's ever increasing. So it helps minimize that. It solves some preservation of our woodland area, which we all know is all very, very important to us. And it's one of the reasons we moved here, is to save some of our unique natural features. And it will minimize the impact to the neighbors all the way around it. So I think at the end of the day, it's a win-win-win. And with that, if there's no further questions, I would like to move forward for a motion to approve the first reading of the rezoning request. Mr. Powell?
Mr. Supervisor, I think the first motion needs to be that I move to approve the preliminary site plan as submitted, except as suggested, changed by the administrative staff, the consultants, and the input from this board tonight.
Okay. I will support that.
I'll take that as a motion. Mr. Roman, support. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Ruggles. Mr. Ruggles.
Mr. Voorhees. Andrea Voorhees.
Yes.
Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Liz Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Cowell.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion carries. Item 10B will be the first reading of the rezoning request for New Hope White Lake. I think we've discussed most of this in detail at this time, and this is more of a formality. I think you would agree with me, Mr. Powell. And if you care to make a motion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Supervisor. I move the first reading of the rezoning from R1D to PD.
And just for the record, you said B as in boy, R1B as in boy?
I thought I said D, but is it B?
It is B.
As in boy. Yes, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Scott.
Yep.
Like roll call vote, please.
Liz Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Andrea Voorhees.
Yes.
Ruggles.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Cowell.
Yes.
7 yes.
Motion carries. Okay, let's just keep moving forward. And gentlemen, Rumi, please take all of this as positive input, and we certainly hope that your project is successful because it will be a success for White Lake Township. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah.
Okay, next 10C, our 2020 OPEB employer contributions. As all of you know, and you heard Pam and Chris talk about it a little bit at our audit, we have tried to position ourselves to be in a better financial position for our liabilities for our retired healthcare and other benefits through our retirement program that we've had through White Lake Township. And I must say that when Mr. Roman and Mr. Lilly and I first started to discuss this, and in particular, Mr. Roman really called it to our attention after we had some communications with the state, that in 2016, we had only had 3.5% of this liability covered. I am happy to say that in 2019, we now have 37.6% of this liability covered. And it's through the diligence of this township, the board, to realize that we have that liability and to carry through to meet our obligation. So kudos to everyone on this board and Mr. Roman and Mr. Lilly, because we knew that this was a need that had to be met. And it was kind of odd because there was the talk of it becoming a big hot potato, and then all of a sudden it became a real hot potato, and we already had one in the oven, so we were in good shape. So gentlemen, I'd like to say thank you very much. And Mr. Roman, I just wanted to, and Mr. Lilly, I wanted to give you kudos for that. So Mr. Roman, I'll let you go from here. Thank you.
Yeah, I would also like to thank the board for helping our township take care of this legacy cost. We at year end had just over $4 million put away in our OPEB funding. And in 2019, our board budgeted for $790,000 to be put away toward this cost in 2020. And so I would recommend to the board to authorize myself to transfer these funds to the OPEB investment fund.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could get a motion, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. With that, Mr. Roman, I will make a motion that the transfer take place of the $790,000, if I'm not mistaken, and that amount would be deposited into the 2020 OPEB employer contribution fund. That is a motion. Looking for support.
I'll support that.
I have support from Andy Voorhees. Roll call vote, please.
Henry Voorhees,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Dot Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Kowal,
Yes.
that was
Motion
7 yes votes.
Thank you. Okay.
Hey, Rick,
Yes, sir.
just a comment to the board. I
please.
just want to remind you guys all that because of previous legislation this year, this retiree health plan is closed off to any other elected or new employees that are hired into this township.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Thank you very much. And thank you, board members, for all your support in that matter. Okay, item 10D. It seems like we were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. Garbage, trash. We're talking trash here. So we've been very lucky to have a pretty good service record with GFL. And somewhere on the line, we have Don Parada. Are you there, Don?
Yes, I am, Supervisor Colwell. Yes.
Thank you. Don is here tonight to answer any questions that the board might have. I have some information that I would like to share with the board. And right now tonight, essentially what we're doing is talking about the letter of transmittal that was sent to all the board members, talking about the options that are available to us. There's been quite a bit of conversation from my office, myself and Trish in particular, back and forth to the representatives of GFL. And we realized that we were winding down into our last year, which again, I still can't believe that. So nonetheless, it is. So we have entertained a 1-year extension, and then we started entertaining other options that were out there. Seeing as this is a service that is rather involved, and when you have a confident carrier that can do the job properly and meet the needs of the township, I believe they deserve an opportunity to put their case before the board. And so there was a number of recommendations that were made. There was a 1-year extension, a 3-year extension, and a 5-year extension, and there was even a 7-year extension at one point. After speaking with other communities and looking at what and how the position of the township is and its growth pattern, I felt that it would be in the best interest for the board to entertain a 5-year, potentially a 5-year plan, simply because we will have a solid direction of what our costs will be, and they are fairly reasonable. So you'll see before you a variety of different pricings. Our current pricing for 2020, which is the last year of our contract, is $14.18. This is at less than the admin fee per unit pickup. And last February, GFL, if you all remember, came to us because we were in the midst of the recycling crisis and was asked White Lake as well as other communities to raise the costs. And they wanted to raise the costs up to $1.10 a month. And we respectfully declined and asked them to hold to their contract. And they held their contract. And they were very business and very forward about it. And I have not had any sense of any kind of retaliatory action or demeanor or attitude of any of the sort. They had their business decision based on their marketability of the recycling products. That I understand has changed to some degree. So they've put before us that the increase in the recycling costs that would have put us at $15.28 for 2020 will now potentially put us, if we entertain a 5-year contract, will start us off at $15.21. So that is a little bit cheaper. I know it's pennies, but pennies over a large contract add up.
Yeah.
$15.21 monthly for the first year with a escalating clause of 2.75%. Do I have that correct, Don?
Yes, you do. If you don't mind, I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about the recycling and yard waste part of our service that we provide to you. GFL over the past 2 years has acquired a compost site, and we recently, about 6 months or 7 months ago, we acquired one of the 3 MRFs in the area. So now we have our own material recovery facility that's down over there off of North Huron Road and 275. So, I mean, we've positioned ourselves to not only be able to cover, the disposal of household solid waste, but we also have taken care of the problem of the collection and processing of recyclables and yard waste.
Very good. So, and I do know that after having some conversation, there's a rather extensive list of communities that have opted to go for the 5-year, their 5-year extension. And I'll just name off a few for my colleagues. The city of Melvindale, city of Woodhaven, city of East Point, city of Roseville, Charter Township of Richmond went for a 4-year, Village of Oxford, 3-year, Harrison Township, 5-year, Highland Township, our sister neighboring community, 5-year, Eagle Harbor, 5-year, Sullivan Lake, 5-year, Bloomfield Township, 8 years, West Bloomfield Township, 5 years, and the city of Royal Oak takes the prize at 10 years.
Wow.
So there's a very high level of confidence in the performance of this company and its ability to service the communities. One of the difficulties, and plug your ears, Don, that I've seen is that there seems to be less and less competition. As we know, Republic has gotten out of the residential business and only wants a commercial. Waste management, I do not want to talk about where they were the last time we went through this. And a few of the other companies have now been absorbed. There's been quite a bit of absorption throughout the industry. So with the 5 years, I feel that we would have a decent course. It's a relatively minimal increase. We know where we will be going. And in time frame, potentially the market will change. There may be the rise of a new member of the industry, so to speak. It's difficult to say, but I would like to recommend to the board to highly consider 5 year. At this time, I'd like to take questions. Mr. Roman, I saw your hand go up.
Just want to make sure I'm unmuted.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I also like the 5-year plan. The reason I like the 5-year plan is we don't know what kind of board is going to be elected in White Lake Township 4 years from now. But if we do have a new board, it would certainly be a benefit to them to have a full year still contracted for garbage. As far as the choices on these proposals, I would support the pricing without the 65-gallon cart. If you want the 65-gallon cart, you can still buy it for $65, but we've got a whole lot of 1- and 2-person residences in White Lake Township. They don't need any more than they have now. And believe it or not, many communities look at those 65-gallon carts as eyesores. So I certainly agree with you, Rick, that a 5-year plan would be to the township's benefit. And I totally agree with you that these prices are very competitive.
I feel very comfortable. And the remark that you made about the carts, and I thank you for bringing it up, is that as I've driven through the community, there are opportunities that I will drive through the subdivisions that have a much higher density, and Twin Lakes and the others the homes are much closer together. And you'll see a series of carts residentially where you'll go along in the little totes where you can't even tell if there's anything in the tote. Okay. And then you see the other tote that looks like the Eiffel Tower, and they tried to stuff stuff around the side and jam stuff up, 3 feet in the air. And it's rather amusing to see what people do. But the problem with that is, and Liz and I have discussed this at length, is that all the debris gets blown all over the place. So if we do make this an option for our residents, if they individually have a family that is very environmentally minded and or a larger household, and they want to recycle, that those larger carts would be available at a direct cost from GFL to, and that, if my understanding is correct, and that is how GFL has agreed to sell them directly to the individuals. Correct, sir?
Yes. Yeah, we'll deal with the residents directly. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Lilly?
I'd like to say in the times past that this board, township board, has went through heck trying to pick a garbage carrier, and I think some of you will remember that. But I've got to say, we thought we were good when we had Republic, but since GFL took over for White Lake, and Don's service has been excellent. I have to say, from our standpoint of, I believe his name is Jeff, our resident person there that takes care of things, done an excellent job for us. So I would support your recommendation, Rick, for the 5-year garbage collection. To me, after what we went through, they're the best.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Powell?
Yes, I had 3 items, and Lisa may have to chime in on a couple of these. First of all, if I heard Don correctly, if we went with the 5-year plan, option 3, without the recycle cart, that's without the cart, but we are still recycling, correct?
Yes, you are. Yes.
All right, and that would be a weekly recycling?
Yes. We do the weekly recycling.
All right. The other questions that I had, and it's due to past issues that we've had for our hauler. In the contract itself, it had a fuel surcharge option to where if fuel goes up, then we were charged a fuel surcharge. And then also the 5-year plan or the 2-year plan or the 10-year plan or the 100-year plan is only as good as the contractor itself. And so what do we have in there? Do we have any bond or anything that if they decide to just renege on the contract after 1.5 years or 2 years, what do we have in our hands to be able to force them to continue?
We don't, and it doesn't exist in the industry. Okay. I'll get you a wagon, Mike. Okay.
So is there, so I understand that. So it's kind of one-sided. We're stuck, but they could leave anytime they want, is what you just told me. Which is
a possibility, but you know, I tend to have a high level of confidence and the way that this company is run and its track record lead me to believe there would be, it would have to be something catastrophic that would affect the industry-wide. For them to leave. But Lisa, you had your hand up. Lisa?
Just to address that point, I have a couple other things that I'd like to mention, but to address Mr. Powell's concern, that's how we got GFL. Our contract was with Allied, and then Allied assigned to GFL. So I just wanted to remind you of that transaction, and it was literally.
It's a different industry. Yes. Yes,
this is not right. You folks do have a performance bond.
A performance what?
You folks do have a performance bond. It's about $300,000 a year. It's an annual performance bond to cover anything that may happen.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. However, it is not for the, in other words, that doesn't say if you're in year 2 and you walked out on the 4, which you're not going to do, you're covered for that one specific period of time. That's my.
Yes, it's an annual bond that's renewed every year.
Okay. Yeah, that I knew there was a level of that. Miss Andrea Voorhees.
I just have actually I have 2 questions. For the additional services. We go through April 1st through the first full week for the compost picking up, correct? Instead of like April 1st to December 1st?
It ends the first full week in December.
Okay. And then the household hazard waste day. I know we're scheduled to have one in June. Are we still having one this year?
No, that has been September.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so that will continue on in 21 then, correct?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, the new date for this year is the 26th of September.
Oh, awesome! Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
We all have questions.
Yeah, let me. I turned away for a moment, so I'm just going to go to Terry. Okay, Terry,
I'm up. Yeah, Rick, I know this is just a FYI on the thing here, but I would like to make a motion to allow you to go ahead and negotiate with GFL and bring a contract back to the Township Board for approval.
Okay, I certainly appreciate that. Is that a motion?
There are, yes, that's in the form of motion, but I'd like to make sure that a lot of the conditions that are in our current contract are in the other contract, basically, other than what has been presented to the board tonight.
Very good. Lisa?
I know that Mrs. Smith had something also, so I don't know if you want to go to her first.
I will go to her. Liz?
Thank you. Appreciate that. So as Rick mentioned, we have had great conversations about garbage and recycling recently. And just a couple of things. I think it's a really wonderful option to include the larger recycling bin for residents that wish to do so. I know good old Michigan weather, people stick their recycling bins out with well-intentioned and they don't expect the rain or the wind, and it does cause garbage to fly around. So those large containers for residents that aren't familiar do have a lid, and they're about the size of our regular garbage cans now.
Well, the recycling carts are 64 gallon. They have wheels on them and they have hinge lids.
Right. They look very, for our residents that are going to view this later or listening, they look very similar to our current wheeled carts. So I think that's a great option. You would purchase it and you would own it for life. So if you are interested in making an investment in recycling, you recycle a lot, that's a good individual option for our residents that wish to do so. And then I just want to compliment GFL. My personal garbage man is wonderful. I've seen him get off the truck and pick up trash, and they are very friendly. And so in my personal neighborhood and area, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll pass that along.
Thank you so much. So I think, we have really good options here. I'd love to hear a little bit more from residents. Before I agree to give Supervisor Kowal authority to negotiate now for the 5 years. But if residents are interested in contacting us or calling in or emailing us before we go through with that contract, I'd love to hear from residents, their voices before we would engage in a contract moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Roman.
Yeah, hey, Don, it, if we do a 5 year, if we do go through with the 5 years, is it possible we can get that performance bond upped?
Yeah, I mean, we could look at that. I mean, the one you have right now is for the 5-year agreement that you had with Republic. So, and if you want to talk to your attorney about it, I mean, we'd be glad to discuss it with them.
Yeah, because $300,000 is only about 2 months garbage pickup. So I'll leave that to Rick to negotiate. He's good at that stuff.
It's $307,200.
Yeah, personally, Rick, I'd like to see it at $1.3 million.
Okay, Michael. Okay, Lisa.
A few things that I want to point out to the board. So first of all, and you would have to, in this whole process, at some point, make a motion to waive your procurement policy, which does require you go out for bids.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that while your current contract allows the township to extend on its current terms, it's a 1-year extension that's allowed in the contract. There's benefits and there's negatives to that. And let me just give you one, for example. Every garbage, your residents pay by SAD. So you're going to have to establish a new SAD, which expired already. So you're only good till the end of this year. And in order to start the SAD process, it needs to be on your June agenda to get the ball rolling. And Janine is still on. Answer more specific questions if you have them. But one thing that we've learned in the process over the last few years is if you extend for the 1 year that's allowed in the contract, you're going through the whole SAD process and the publication costs and the notice requirements, and then you're going to have to do it again next year, whatever term you decide to go forward on. That's why I say it's got good and it's got bad. And in the fact that can extend the contract 1 year by the contract's term for the same price. But you lose out on creating the SAD for more than just 1 year because you just have to redo it next year.
Right. Thank you, Lisa.
Question.
Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, thanks. Just for clarification on the 5-year, if the 65-gallon recycling cart wasn't included, what would the price be then? Is it still $16.35?
Well, the cart is the one option that we would look at that we thought was best. It does not include the cart. Okay. The cart is an option that is a direct cost to residents. Okay. It will dump it, but because not every resident wants that cart. There's a lot of them that won't want to tote that thing in and out of their garage. Some of them won't even have a proper place to put it. It's strictly an option.
And a one-time
actually
fee
one of
to
those.
residents.
Yeah, and it is a one-time fee for the resident.
Gotcha. Okay. In addition to that, I would just say, what Lisa was talking about, our procurement policy. I was here 5 years ago, and I went through that experience, and it wasn't exactly fantastic. The bids came in extremely high. Rizzo turned it into a circus, and I think that we could all say with GFL, although I was, if you remember, a little skeptical when the contract was moved to GFL. I've been happy. I think our residents have been happy. And I think that if we're comfortable with the kind of service that's being provided to our residents, that I would be willing to entertain an extension or a new 5-year contract myself without trying to conduct some type of a sealed bid or closed bid, especially considering the kind of environment that we're in now and the people that don't want to take part in residential garbage pickup. So that's my feeling on it.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggles. And my phone is going off here, and I've got, we love our huge recycling cart, best purchase ever. We have been a GFL customer for a couple of years. So we have different people. This is for Waterford. I don't know if the Waterford, yeah, it's I think a Waterford resident, but there's people that are happy with the carts and they like them. So apparently it is an option. So and with just a show of hands, we're going to do a mock vote here. How many of you would be interested in moving forward with potentially a 5-year contract?
With the optional bid, optional recycling bid, right?
Yes, yes, of course, but okay. All right, I will, at that time, Mr. Lilly, would you care to make that motion?
Before you do, I want to pick up on something that Lisa said, and I'm a little concerned about it. And I'm not sure why the rush is needed if our contract is good through the end of the year. An SAD is normally a 3-4 month process, but if she's right and we have to have our first public hearing in June, we need a motion regarding an intent to establish an SAD, quite frankly, today.
No.
Oh.
In June. That
Okay.
first step is in June.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We're behind the 8 ball, Mike.
Oh, yeah, I always am.
Okay. All right.
And Lisa, I just,
On the table.
we're okay binding the future board.
That's a gray area, but yes, I mean, we do it.
It is done. It is indeed for these two particular types of services, and we enter into contracts. When we enter into a 30-year contract for a sewer, we enter into other long-term contracts. This falls into the same type of category, a service public. So I argue both sides of that fiddle. Okay, Mr. Lilly.
Rick, I'd just like to mention about the 5-year contract. Even though it does go in to the next board, I think we'd be doing a great disservice to them by not taking advantage of the current contract. So I don't have any problem with recommending Don and his company to do this.
Okay, Mr. Lilly, did you want to make that motion?
I made the motion to give you the authority to move forward with the contract.
Okay, thank you, sir. Looking for support?
Support.
I have support from Mr. Ruggles. Roll call vote, please.
Ray Voorhees,
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mike Powell,
Yes.
Scott Ruggles,
Yes.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Colwell?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Yes.
I will put something together and bring it to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Donna. Have a great evening. Okay.
You too. Stay well, everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a little quickie FYI I want to throw out there that our illustrious attorney, Lisa Hamami, was helping us to craft a COVID preparedness plan required by the executive order that will bring us back into operation here in our township. And I am not going to bring that before the board tonight, but I'm going to bring it before the board on the special meeting that we're going to have in a few days. And there's quite a bit of information in there. There's things that I want to look at, and I've also reflected it to our labor attorney to make sure the I's are double dotted and the T's are double crossed. So that will be coming forthwith, and that will be more or less a document that really none of us are going to have the ability to sit there, well, do this, do that. No, crafting to what needs to be done to adhere to the coronavirus preparedness plan to come back to work. So that with that. Now with that, I will go into trustee comments. Liz Smith.
Okay. So it's so nice to see all of you. I miss your faces. I hope you're all well and healthy and your families are good and healthy. So I'll start with just a quick library update. The library does remain closed at least through May 30th, following executive orders. They have updated their website. Go check it out. It looks great. They will start posting their library board director meetings linked to their new website. On their new website, resources are still available to our residents, so you can still use our library while you're home during this time. I'd like to congratulate Firefighter of the Year, Andrew Sittler. We weren't able to gather as a community and board to celebrate our fireman and policeman of the year. Perhaps that will be rescheduled later. The fire department did announce today, well-deserved congratulations. I wish he was here that we could give him a round of applause. So congratulations there. I want to thank all of our residents that showed their appreciation, celebrated and honored our wonderful White Lake Township Police Department last week for National Police Week and Peace Officer Memorial Day on last Friday. Thank you so much. Well-deserved. They are showing up every day for us. Our fire and police, our first responders are outstanding. Please keep them in your prayers and continue to show them how much we appreciate them and care. This Thursday, it was posted on our White Lake Township Facebook. If you're looking for information, you can pick up a oak tree sapling from noon to 3 p.m. behind the township office. This is for celebrating the bicentennial of Oakland County. The oak tree is the official seal for Oakland County. So you can take one home, bring your own plastic bag, plant it. That's a fun activity. So I'm looking forward to that. As we move through the end of the school year, I want to take just a moment to congratulate all of those high school seniors or fifth graders or eighth graders that are missing their celebrations. We celebrate you and we honor you, and congratulations, job well done this school year. It's been a rocky road at the end, and so I just want to send you well wishes. And then again, I want to thank all of our first responders, essential workers, and critical infrastructure. You're doing an excellent job. I continue to pray for you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. Our community is safe because of you. And residents, stay safe. Well wishes for good health. I continue to pray for our community. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And that's all I have. Good night.
Thank you. Andrea.
As the Parks and Rec liaison, I want to thank the parks for continuing to be open free. I've never seen so many people at Bloomer Park, White Lake Township's newest park on Mikichi Road. It's nice to see them exploring the parks of White Lake. And on a personal note, I'd like to thank the fire department and the police department and our board members. They were able to be part of the participation of my dad's 90th birthday parade. He loved every bit of it. He loved seeing all the board members and some of the, even the retired politicians that came by. So thank you, and be safe, be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ruggles.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, it's good to see you guys. I know it's starting to feel a little bit distant, not being in the township offices, not getting close to anybody. So I know I'm ready for normal life to kind of get a little bit more normal. I think last time when we were here on Zoom a month ago, we were talking about our opinions on, listening to the governor's orders. But I think now finally she's coming to her senses, and we're all going to get back to normal life. But I know it's affected all of us. I mean, for me personally, I didn't open that flower stand there on 59 just because I couldn't figure out a way to keep employees safe, and in this Corona climate. So it's closed, but I know we've all been affected. I hope everybody stays safe, and hopefully at some point we can start having these meetings face to face again and get off the phones. But great seeing you. Hopefully a little bit closer soon.
Good deal. Mr. Lilly.
Thanks.
Rick.
That's it.
I just want to say thanks to my staff, particularly Shanna. At this point, she's our new employee, and she's doing very good on the laserfish right now. So it's going to take her a while, but I sure appreciate her getting started in it again. Kathy and Ashley, nothing's changed much for us on elections at this point. I understand the Secretary of State is going to be sending out absentee ballot requests for every voter in Michigan. We still don't know at this point whether we're going to conduct a normal election or whether it will be absentee only. So we're basically having to plan for either alternative at this point. So also want to thank Elaine and Dawn for their work that they did on the audit this year. That, like I say, it's becoming more critical, more work, more things to comply with. But thanks to them that they got the job done again.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just have two issues, and I'm glad that Sean is still with us there. I've been receiving a number of calls regarding the Four Towns development there in downtown Union Lake. The more I see it, the more I regret voting for it. And shame on me for not realizing what an intrusion that would be in the right-of-way there towards Union Lake Road. It would have been great if the developers had have finished that off to where it doesn't look so unsightly and gaudy there as you leave Union Lake there to the north. I regret allowing it to be so close to the road and to the lake. I believe that they've done their very best to make it look as ugly as it can be during the construction. And I'm sorry that I voted for it right now the way it is. So it was just a statement from me to my residents, my co-residents here in White Lake Township. The last item is, if you looked at the police and fire reports this month, I almost pulled them off because I was stricken by the obvious lack of call-ins and calls that were required. They're down about a fifth in both of them. Police, I thought I could justify because there was no traffic. And so the tickets are down, the arrests are down. You can't go to court, so you can't do any of that. And so that seemed to be fairly logical. But I could not figure out why the fire department was down that far as well. People still live in their homes. They still do their day-to-day items, and yet fires were down, medical calls were down, incidences were down. Everything was down by about a fifth, down to a fifth of what they normally are. So I actually called and talked to Russell in Station 2 today, and we kind of speculated on what that might be. And we kind of thought that a couple things. Number one, he said that people did not want to have any medical runs. They were afraid they were going to be taken to the hospital where the virus was in full force, and so they deliberately didn't call for any medical runs. People were in their homes being very cautious, and fires weren't being started. And they were just paying more attention to things because of the environment. So that being said, we could almost make a case that if people were to pay attention a little bit more to how they act and how they live and what they do, we might keep those emergency runs down to a minimum if we just try a little bit. So it was just an interesting observation, and I appreciated Sergeant Russell helping me understand those.
Very good. It is interesting. It's a big change in the way people look at things. Some of the element did not want to go to jail because jail's not where you want to be. And the other element didn't necessarily want to go to the hospital because the hospital wasn't necessarily where you wanted to be.
Right.
So it's been a definite, interesting observation of humanity. So hopefully we'll get through this, and before too long, we'll be back to some better sense of normal. Okay, well, that being said, I'd like to call out to everyone that the census is still ongoing, and it is very, very important that each and every one of you fill out your census form or get online and do it. Get out there. It means money to the township. You're talking roughly between $1,400 and $1,800 per person over a 10-year period in federal money that would be coming to our, ultimately worm its way into our community. So it's extremely important. It's 9 questions. It is not intrusive. Just answer and be counted. You do count. So it's very important that you're counted. If you have any questions, you can get the census.com, .org, government. There's a lot of different sites out there. We have signs throughout the township and little places that they're talking about what the census. It's on our webpage. The information is out there. The 200-year bicentennial of Oakland County is kind of a cool thing, and I had an opportunity to get together with the Parks and Rec and their Oakland County Park and Rec, and they came across this opportunity to come across oak trees. So I thought, that's a natural. So I tried to get a rather ambitious number of trees, but things have changed a little bit, so I couldn't get quite the number that I have. I'll find out on Thursday how many I'm gonna get when I go to pick them up. But I will be out behind the township on Thursday afternoon in the back here with 18 to 24 inch oak saplings that I would love to see planted throughout White Lake Township. I think it's kind of a cool thing. And in the event that we have some extra, I'll be looking for draftees to go down to our new park and plant some trees throughout the park. So it'll be something to do. So hopefully we'll get some takers, and I really appreciate that. I want to talk about the supervisor's challenge that I did last month and talked about a little bit. We have a very generous community, and we also have a very, other communities that surround us are generous. And by putting that call out, because Open Door has, again, it couldn't do its May tea, its Julie run is in jeopardy, and it is feeding more people now than it has in a long time because of the need in our community. I'm very pleased to say that I've never been happier to be a loser, okay? And the reason I'm saying that is because my very good friend, Gary Wall, put the screws to some people in Waterford, and he was able to raise $9,138, okay? And we raised $5,500, okay? So if you do the proportionate population, we didn't do too bad. But hey, like I said, it's a good, I'm happy to be a loser this time around. Mr. Roman.
Hey, just a quick question, Rick. How did Commerce do? I know you challenged them as well.
I haven't gotten a report from them yet, so I'm hoping they come up to the plate. So we'll see where that goes. Thank you. So, but it's what community can do when it gets together and it has a need. So Gary, my hat's off to you and your board and your members. Thank you very, very much. It'll be to a very good cause, and charity is something that, you know, my mom always said begins at home, in our community, in our backyard. Is what's very important to do. One of the things that we're looking at potentially that we have talked about here are the state revenue shortfalls. Well, when you hear shortfalls, what does that mean? Well, when you're a kid and your allowance got reduced, it wasn't a happy day. Well, our allowance is going to be reduced. So we're going to have to take a good hard look at whatever opportunities or tools in the box that there are for us to help preserve the monies for the township to function as best it can and without having any shortfalls. Our projections are good. We're financially sound. As a matter of fact, I'm very pleased and proud to say that we did receive our A+ rating today, which I feel very comfortable with. And that's all due to the good work of all the persons involved. Elaine, Dawn, Lisa, the whole crowd that, you know, comes in here and helps, and everybody that does what they do makes it all come together. So I appreciate everything. And Mike and Terry, again, thank you so much. So, but we are going to look at whatever options are available to us as a township and what mechanisms may be available for us to see whatever to preserve monies as best we can. So with that, my only other thing is that we still have seniors out there. Don't forget, seniors, 248-698-2394. If you have questions, issues, needs, hats off to Jason Hudson. We had a resident that called with the wind that we had about 10, 12 days ago. She had a little leak on her roof, and Jason went over there and just kind of looked up on the corner to see how bad the problem was and kind of tucked the shingle back up in there because this woman was terrified of her roof leaking, and she was extremely happy. So that's the kind of people that work here at the township. So we're being mindful of our residents and trying to care for them the best we can. Meals on Wheels is running fine. We're doing good. Living in a great country, despite all the goings on of the craziness. And with that, I say good night. God bless. And Mr. Roman.
Rick, I didn't get a chance to do public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I called.
Trustee comment. I just figured you were sick of hearing from me all day.
I'm slipping the disc. Go ahead. I'm so sorry, Michael.
Did Scott, did you do public comment?
You did.
Yeah.
You did. Okay.
It was unimpressive, apparently.
No, it's just don't you're
that's the first
with your
time
common sense and logic, it goes right through me. It's all good, Scott. Well, first, I wanted to thank personally Elaine Hellmeister, our chief accountant, and my deputy Lisa Reeser for all the great work that you two did to get this audit done. A+ to both you guys. Thank you so much. Second, I wanted to say happy birthday, happy 90th birthday again to former White Lake Township Treasurer Ron Voorhees. Andrea, you guys did such a super job with that party.
Thank you.
Ron, if you're listening.
Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Ron, if you're listening, thanks for everything you've done for our township. Third, I would like to thank my wife, Diane Roman, for a terrific job making masks for our entire township office. So Diane, if you're listening, thank you. They look terrific. Great job. Fourth, I have a message for Governor Whitmer. It's time to open up our economy. Our business owners are smart enough to operate safely. It's time. And finally, I just want to say to my fellow board members, it is a pleasure to work with all of you. You guys always bring so much common sense and logic to this board. Truly a pleasure. That's all I have, Rick.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Likewise. Thank you.
Well, with that, I'd say to everyone, good night. God bless, and take care.
Good
Need a
night,
motion
everyone.
to
Night,
adjourn?
thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Roll call vote.
Unanimous.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Rowley, yes. Mr. Roman,
Yes.
Yes.
Liz Smith,
Yes.
Mike Paul,
Yes, yes.
Andrea Voorhees,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggles.
Yes.
Please all have a good night.
Thank
moved.
you. Thank
Good
you,
night,
Ken.
guys.
Thank you. I just
Thank you,
gonna be
Ken.
here for a
Appreciate
few.
it.
Yep, thank you, Liz. I just need to let the technology wind down and we'll be all set here.